I was just going to say, I think I have my wires crossed with City Hall, reconstituted City Council, and who drops by in the rotation. And I was expecting it this week, but it may well be next week that we'll actually see a council member. And I've got to be honest with you, I had no idea what I was even going to bring up today on a city issue. We get into this time of year, and it seems to be a little quiet, except I was out driving the other day. I had to run. I confess, I went to Walmart. I know a lot of people don't like shopping there, and I'm one of them. I have to say that because years they did that Made in the USA campaign when it was in reality made all over Asia. But once in a great while, I just have to break down because there's something I need there that I can't find somewhere else. So I had to go there the other day, and I drove across town, and I was taking some back streets, hoping to avoid some of the stoplights on Blue Lakes Boulevard. And I was making note of the potholes. Now, that's not unusual. We're in a time of year right now where you're driving around and the weather has been, well, we've been getting a thaw nearly every day, but cold overnight. You're going to start seeing the appearance of potholes. And I guess the question is, if you really see a big crater out there, who do you call? And I saw a few craters. Not anything really massive yet that's going to swallow up my Jeep. But I'm seeing a few pop up here and there in spots, and sometimes if you're driving down a street, you have to kind of look around and do a head fake and hope nobody's going to, come up and ticket you for driving out of lane because you're dodging some of these potholes and you're making sure you're not getting into somebody else's lane while you're doing it. It's 9:08. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. I have a couple of other things I've got to share with you quickly this morning. We have an issue in this country where Lefty seems to believe that we have to disarm most of America. Lefty doesn't trust you to own firearms. If you're in flyover country, of course, you're just a bitter clinger when it comes to God and guns, as somebody at the White House once said while campaigning for office. I came across this today. This is a unique response from a legislator, a state legislator in South Carolina. And he's a defender of the Second Amendment. He's a defender of your gun rights. But he points out that the establishment media in this country, again, 99.5% of people who are actually practicing media, is essentially on board with Lefty in trying to grab your guns. Daily Caller, here's the headline. South Carolina lawmaker introduces bill to add journalist registry. A bill introduced Tuesday, and now he's doing this in a tongue-in-cheek fashion. Right off the top, that leftists out there who don't really have an ability to think critically, they're going, oh, good heavens, he's trying to eliminate the First Amendment. A bill introduced Tuesday in South Carolina by a member of the House of Representatives would create a, quote, responsible journalism registry, unquote, criteria on what qualifies someone as a journalist and set requirements for media outlets before hiring a journalist. The bill, titled South Carolina Responsible Journalism Registry Law, was introduced by Republican Representative Mike Pitts. He says the legislation, which includes criminal penalties and fines, was meant as a rebuttal to the way the press handles gun legislation. See, because they're all hep on taking away the Second Amendment, or limiting it, or restricting it, or having a registry. But media relies on the First Amendment, and so why don't we have any restrictions there? Well, people say, we do. You can't yell fire in a crowded movie house. Then they tell you that's why we need to have restrictions on guns. I'm telling you, we already have those restrictions. If you yell fire in a crowded movie house and there's a stampede, you're going to be arrested. If you actually take your firearm and you walk next door and unprovoked shoot your neighbor, you're going to be arrested for that too. What's the difference? So yes, there are restrictions. It is a crime to shoot someone. The right to bear arms does not mean you have the right to go killing willy-nilly. The media just can't seem to separate those two issues. The fellow who introduced the bill, Mr. Pitts, says, it strikes me as ironic that the first question is constitutionality from a press that has no problem demonizing firearms. Speaking to a newspaper in South Carolina when he said that. He added, with this statement, I'm talking primarily about printed press and TV. The TV stations, the 6 o'clock news, and the printed press has no qualms demonizing gun owners and gun ownership. So yes, their liberties are fine, your liberties are bad. That's how we've got not only leftists, but when you say leftists, you could just as well say mainstream media. It simply is a synonym anymore. They're all fellow travelers. 31 right now. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. It comes down to this. We've got people who think they're more responsible than you are. They don't know you, but somehow they believe, well, I live on the left coast, or I live in New York City, or I live in Washington. Therefore, I'm smarter than the guy who lives in Idaho, Nebraska, or Arkansas. And for that reason, we have to control you. Because our brains are apparently bigger because we live on the coasts and you don't. The nanny state, the notion that everything we do has to be somehow managed by people who are smarter. Where did they get this notion? Who told them they were smarter? They told themselves. That's how that happened. They want to, how shall we put it, manage every aspect of your life from the moment you're born until the day you die, and then beyond if they can. This is from Philly.com. Philly.com is an umbrella online for two newspapers in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Inquirer and another one is called the Philadelphia Daily News. They used to be rivals, but in the modern media universe, they've had to merge and share resources. In other words, half the staff got fired. This is from a writer named Tricia L. Nadomi. Hoverboards were among the most in-demand gifts this past holiday season. Did you know that? I have no interest in getting one myself. I've seen them in operation. Actually, there's a video somebody shared with me online the other day, and it's of a terrorist, and he's on his way with his bomb to go blow something up, and he's using a hoverboard, but he ends up tripping and falling off the hoverboard, and when he hits the pavement, boom, he's gone. I mean, just to see a big ball of flame. Scratch one terrorist. Well, these hoverboards are becoming more and more popular. People stand on them. It's unlike similar to a skateboard, except apparently what? You got some air blowing out the bottom, compressed air, and that helps you can move along. You don't get any exercise that way, but this is modern America, right? Who's worried about exercise? The writer says it could be dangerous, and they are known to burst into flames. Well, yeah, I want to ride around on one of those, that's for sure. However, your choice to ride on it is really your own. Listen to this. In light of those cases and scores of reported injuries from falls off them, a member of the Philadelphia City Council plans to introduce legislation Thursday that would slap adults with a $25 fine if children in their care use the boards without helmets, knee pads, and elbow pads, or even wrist guards. People underestimate the dangers, said Michael Rivlin, a hand and arm specialist at the Rothman Institute at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital. We have seen a number of injuries that require surgery. You know what? My sister and I were having a conversation on the telephone last week. We were talking about some of the old neighbors we used to know, and we had the Mrs. Kennedy down the street, I believe was her name. She had a big old house, and it was surrounded by big old trees. And my sister used to like to go down there and pick Mrs. Kennedy's flowers, and Mrs. Kennedy, steam would come out of her ears, because here's my sister not knowing any better that she shouldn't be picking other people's flowers. Well, Mrs. Kennedy yelled at her one day, and my sister decided to climb up a tree and hide on Mrs. Kennedy's property. Then my sister fell out of the tree and broke a collarbone. Well, with this logic, then my sister should have been wearing a helmet. My parents should have known she should have been wearing a helmet because she's up a tree. And there are trees in the neighborhood, so therefore, everybody should walk around wearing helmets because at some point you may decide to go climb into a tree. And when you do, any reasonable human being knows if you go up, you have to come down, and you might come down hard. So our choices are either chop down all of the trees or ensure that everybody walks around wearing a helmet. I walked across the parking lot at work this morning, and it was like walking across an icy pond. Should I have been wearing a helmet? Well, I guess so, because if I had slipped and fallen, I could have cracked my skull on the asphalt, right? So therefore, I don't know any better. Somebody should require me to wear a helmet. And I was driving into work as well, and it was icy, and if I'd had to slam on the brakes or I had a problem or the car had skidded off the road and I'd crashed into a bridge abutment, I could have crashed my head down on the dashboard or on the windshield. Good golly, who knows what could have happened? So we should be wearing crash helmets wherever we drive. And, if you're at the grocery store and you're walking around and somebody decides they're playing football with a can of soup, you could get beamed on the head. You should be wearing a helmet at the grocery store. But if you go to a baseball game and you're sitting in the crowd, well, somebody could fire a line drive and it could smack you in the head, so you better be wearing your helmet there as well. The good thing, government is there to ensure that we're going to all have to wear helmets for these reasons. My sister needed some surgery for her broken collarbone, but nobody recommended that she next wear the helmet in a tree. But you know, that was almost 50 years ago. Clearly, doctors weren't as smart 50 years ago as they are now, so therefore they were wrong and they erred in telling my parents that she should have a helmet on because she just might climb a tree at the neighbor's house. We have a caller with us. It's 917. It's 32. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com, and what's on your mind?
Well, your subject. I didn't wear a helmet. I didn't do a lot of stuff, riding bicycles, skateboards. I remember transitioning between fuel wheels, clay wheels, poly wheels on skate. I'm still here. It just seems to me that the bigger the government gets, the more nanny countries become.
Yeah.
They've got to do everything for us. So pretty soon, what, they're going to find somebody to feed us to ensure that we put the right thing? We need to wake up. I mean, when do we make a choice that affects our lives and it's our problem?
Well, we could. Thank you for the call. We could eliminate the unemployment program problem by just simply having government minders come and live in our homes with us, and they could Velcro us to the walls, and when we need to go to the bathroom, they could take us down and make sure we get to the bathroom safely, and they could take us to the kitchen and make sure that we eat all the right things, and then Velcro us back to the walls. But we need them 3 shifts a day, and we'd need them obviously on weekends too. So yes, we would solve the unemployment problem in this country. 918, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, how would a helmet, knee pad, shoulder pad, whatever, save your sister from getting a broken collarbone? That's the thing, is that the government's trying to protect us from everything, and the things that they try to protect us from aren't going to help us at all. They want to protect us in a way that doesn't even protect us. That's the bad thing about having idiots that think they know everything in charge. If we actually had people that knew what they were talking about, they would say, hey, stuff happens, you need to learn how to protect yourself, and then these things won't happen. And that's what it is. At work, you go to work, most of these places that have factories, they have programs to teach people to be more aware of their surroundings, more aware of the things that they need to do so they can be safe. Government's not like that. We're just going to bubble wrap everything so you're safe.
Thank you much for the call. And he got me thinking, too. If these hovercraft can catch fire, the helmet's not going to do you any good while you're burning. So if you're going to ride your little hoverboard, everybody is going to have a flame retardant suit, just like you would if you were a NASCAR driver. But you know what? It'll be good because you can get somebody to pay for it with a sponsorship, Put that right across your flame retardant suit. Yeah. There's the ticket. 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. Oh, it is cold back east. I'm looking at that weather hottie on Fox right now.